Thanksgiving was already cold, but nothing prepared me for what my sister said when she handed me a paper plate. She's used to scraps. She didn't whisper it. She didn't flinch. Just said it like she was reading off a menu, then turned her back and floated into her perfect dining room, all golden light and curated centerpieces and crystal that only came out twice a year. I stood there for a second, holding that flimsy paper plate like it had burned me. My kids Micah and Ela were right behind me. 12 and 9, neither said a word. They didn't need to. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting to see what I'd do. And the worst part, I smiled, not because I was okay, not even close, but because I knew I couldn't fall apart in front of them. Not after everything we'd already been through. Not after how hard I'd tried to make this day feel normal. So I swallowed the sting in my throat and said, "Come on, babies, let's go eat." We walked past the glowing kitchen, the laughter, the polished mahogany table where my cousins were pouring wine, and my mother was adjusting her pearls like she was on a magazine cover. No one looked at us. No one offered to help. We exited through the side door and into the garage. It smelled like gasoline and dust, the kind of smell that clings to the back of your throat. There was one folding table, 2 metal chairs, and a crate someone had dragged over like an afterthought. No decorations. No napkins, just a single roll of paper towels sitting like a joke in the middle of the table. I set the plate down and helped Ila up onto the crate. She tried to smooth her dress underneath her legs like someone might still be watching. Micah sat stiffly in the metal chair, staring at the food, thin slices of turkey, mashed potatoes, without gravy green beans that looked like they'd come from a microwavable bag. No cranberry sauce, no bread, no seconds. No one came to check on us. Ela nudged her sweet potato pie with a plastic fork. "Is this where we're eating?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, baby, this is it." She didn't say anything else, just kept her eyes on her plate. Micah clenched his jaw. That quiet, tight-jawed look he gets when he's trying not to cry. After a while, he finally said, "Why'd they put us out here?" I took a breath. "I don't know. He didn't believe me. I didn't believe me." Ela asked, "Did we do something bad?" That was it, the moment, the shift. Not anger, not even sadness, just clarity, a cold, hard snap in my chest. "No," I said, "you didn't do anything wrong." But I had. I had brought them here. I had ironed that second-hand dress. I had baked the cornbread. I had convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. And I was wrong. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. It's not big, it's not fancy, but it's warm, it's ours. I work long shifts at a pediatric clinic, then freelance at night when the kids go to bed. Some days I barely have time to eat, let alone rest. But we make it work. We always have. So why was I still showing up to a house where I was always treated like an afterthought? Maybe it was the kids. Maybe it was the tiny hope that one holiday they'd finally see us. Maybe it was habit, or guilt, or shame I hadn't fully named yet. But as I sat in that freezing garage, watching my kids pretend this was okay, I realized I couldn't do it anymore. Not just for me. For them. For their dignity. For the stories they'll carry into adulthood about what family means. Because this wasn't family. This was exile wrapped in linen napkins. I didn't even plan on going this year. Last Thanksgiving, I swore it would be my last one at Camille's house. But then Micah asked if his cousins would be there. Ela wanted to know if Grandma Helen might remember her name this time. I told them it was just another dinner, no big deal. But by the end of the week, I was ironing my only decent dress and making sweet potato pie in our little kitchen, like it was tradition, like this whole charade was normal. We got there around 3. Camille lives in a gated community where even the trash cans look rich. Her house could fit our entire apartment inside just the foyer. I parked 2 blocks down because the driveway was full. That walk to the front door felt longer than it should have, my heels clicking on the stone path, Micah carrying the pie, Ila gripping my hand. The front door was cracked open, like they were expecting guests, just not us. I knocked once. No one came. No surprise there. We stepped inside to the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. Camille's house always smells like lemon polish and new money, sterile controlled. Her living room was full. My cousins were already on their second drinks, lounging on cream couches with throw pillows you weren't supposed to touch. Camille's 3 daughters were performing some kind of dance routine in front of the fireplace. Everyone was smiling, clapping. The vibe was polished, curated. Then there was us three people standing in the doorway, like uninvited guests who let themselves in. "Hi, Ma," I said quietly, placing the pie down on the marble counter. My mother didn't look up from her wine glass. She was perched on the edge of the couch, eyes glazed, but smiling at her granddaughter's performance like it was Broadway. "Oh," she said, finally glancing at me. "You look tired." It sounded like concern. It wasn't. Camille appeared from the kitchen like she was walking a runway velvet dress stilettos, holding a dish towel with 2 fingers like it might contaminate her. She eyed the pie. "Oh, you brought something. That's cute." "Sweet potato," I said. "Ela helped me." Camille gave a closed-mouth smile and vanished again. Her husband, Derek, brushed past me with a glass of scotch. "Hey, G," he said using a nickname I never liked. "Kids look big." Then he disappeared behind the fridge door. No one asked us to sit. No one offered a drink. No one made space. It's funny how being ignored can feel louder than being insulted. Ela tugged at my sleeve. "Can I give Grandma the pie?" I hesitated. "Okay, be gentle." She walked over, holding the plate like it was made of gold. "I made this," she said, "for you." My mom blinked. "Sweet potato," she forced a thin smile. How quaint. Ela's face didn't change, but her hands tightened on the plate before she placed it on the coffee table and came back to me in silence. That should have been the moment I left. That should have been the point where I gathered my kids, walked out the door, and said, "We don't do this anymore." But I stayed. 1 hour, I told myself, just an hour. Dinner was being served. I figured we'd finally get to sit, maybe breathe. I watched everyone carry plates into the dining room, take seats, pass wine, unfold napkins. I waited for Camille to wave us over. Instead, she walked straight toward me. She was smiling, too wide, too fake. "We're a little short on space," she said loud like a stage voice. "So I set something up for you guys in the garage." I blinked. "Wait, what?" She nodded, still smiling. "Yeah, you're used to scraps, right?" Everything stopped. The clink of silverware, the laughter, the noise, gone. The silence that followed was thick. No one gasped. No one objected. They just froze. And in that moment, I saw it clearly, not just the cruelty, but the comfort with which she delivered it. This wasn't new. This was rehearsed. I took the paper plates from her hands and said, "Thank you," and walked. Because if I didn't walk out on my own terms, I would have collapsed right there. That garage. It wasn't just cold. It was meant to be cold. The kind of cold that says, "You're not welcome here." Ela sat on the crate like it was fine. Micah looked down at the food, like he couldn't decide if he was supposed to eat or throw it away. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper towels. I didn't eat. I couldn't. The silence wasn't just silence, it was rejection. It was years of pretending. It was every Christmas where my gift was half the size of everyone else's. Every birthday forgotten. Every dinner where no one asked me how I was doing. Every time my kids were referred to as those two instead of by name. Micah finally said it. Quiet but firm. "Can we just go?" He didn't say it with anger. He said it like he was done asking to be treated like a person. I squeezed his shoulder. "Soon." Then we sat. Forks scraping plastic. Every sound inside the house felt like a reminder of where we weren't, of who we'd never be to them. Laughter, clinking glasses, someone opening the fridge. No one came out. No one checked. No one brought a second helping. I heard Camille's laugh. My mom's voice followed. Something about the wine being perfect this year. No mention of us. And I just kept thinking, they see us. They know we're here. And they're fine with this. Ela finally whispered, "I miss our house." Micah corrected her. "It's not little. It's just enough." And in that moment, I wanted to cry. Not because they were wrong, but because they were right. They saw it before I did. This wasn't an accident. This was how it's always been. And for some reason, this year I finally stopped making excuses for it. I looked at them, at their quiet strength, at how hard they were trying not to let it show, and I realized I'd been raising them to survive this dynamic instead of rejecting it. That was the moment something shifted in me. Not rage, not revenge, just done. Done making myself small. Done trying to earn crumbs. Done letting them believe this was okay. I reached for my bag, started collecting the plates. Ela whispered, "Are we leaving?" "Soon," I said again. But this time I meant it. I meant for good. I don't know how long we sat there. 10 minutes, 40 time felt warped in that garage like grief. Heavy still without edges. I had gathered the plates, stacked them neatly, like I was still trying to prove something. Like being tidy would earn back some respect. I was just about to tell the kids it was time to go when the headlights swept across the driveway. Not soft little sedan headlights, big deliberate ones. Micah looked up first. Is someone else coming? We all turned toward the small square window in the garage door. A limousine. Not an Uber, not a family car, a limousine. It glided up the curved driveway, slow and silent, black as ink. The engine purred as it rolled past the front door, didn't stop, and kept going. My stomach flipped. Ila pressed close to my side. Micah squinted. Wait, why is it coming back here? The engine cut off just outside the side entrance. A door opened. The driver stepped out. Pale gloves, crisp suit, black cap. He looked like he'd been printed from a catalog. He walked to the back door. Opened it. And then she stepped out. A woman. Tall, graceful. Maybe 60, maybe a little older. Hair pinned back neatly. Wearing a navy blue wool coat that looked more expensive than anything I'd ever touched. Not flashy. Just solid. The kind of expensive you don't have to announce. She looked around, clocked the driveway, the house, the side yard. And then, instead of heading toward the front steps, she turned to the side gate. Toward us. I didn't move. I didn't know how to. Micah stood up. Is she coming here? Ila whispered. Do we know her? I cracked the door just a bit. Cold air slipped in. But the woman didn't flinch. She stepped up, hands clasped calmly in front of her. She smiled. Excuse me, she said like she was asking where the poetry section was in a bookstore. I'm looking for the owner of this house. I swallowed. That would be my sister. She's inside. The woman tilted her head, studying me, like she was waiting for something. And you are? Grace, I said cautiously. Grace Holloway. Her expression didn't change. But her voice did. You're exactly who I came to see. Ila gasped quietly. Micah blinked like someone had slapped him. I'm sorry, I said. Do I know you? Her smile widened just slightly. My name is Margaret Winslow. I run an organization called Women Forward. We support community programs, mentorship, and professional storytelling across the country. She paused, watching my face for recognition. I'd heard of it. Briefly, once, I couldn't place where. 5 years ago, she continued, you volunteered at a women's shelter. You were going through a hard time, newly separated, staying with a friend, just trying to survive. The memory came rushing back late nights after my shift, showing up to fold laundry, read bedtime stories to strangers' kids, scrub baseboards, because I didn't know what else to do with my sadness. You wrote about it, Margaret said. Raw, honest, beautifully written. I've been following your blog ever since. I froze. That blog. I had maybe 20 readers. It wasn't meant to be anything. Just a place to process late at night after the kids were asleep, when I had nothing left in me but the truth. I didn't think anyone saw that I whispered. I did, she said. And I remembered it. She stepped forward. We're organizing a speaker series. Our national summit is this spring. I'd like you to be our opening keynote. We'll handle everything travel, childcare accommodations. And we're partnering with a publisher. They're interested in your story, a book. Your voice matters, Grace. It's time the world heard it. The air in my lungs turned to sand. I looked at Micah. His mouth hung open slightly. He looked from her to me, like he was watching a dream form in real time. Ila squeezed my hand. Mom. Margaret turned to them. Your mom is extraordinary. And for the first time in years, I didn't flinch when someone said that. I didn't try to deflect it. I just stood there, feeling the truth of it land. I looked back at the house, the warm windows, the silhouettes behind the curtains. They were watching. I knew they were. Watching the garage they tried to hide me in. Become the center of gravity. Margaret reached out her hand. Will you join us? I nodded. Not out of shock, but out of clarity. Yes. I would be honored. She smiled. Wonderful. We have dinner reservations. Let's talk more there. I turned to Micah. Grab the leftovers. He moved like he was in a trance, careful, quiet, like those scraps suddenly mattered. Ila was still looking at me, like I had just turned into someone new. Someone she always believed I could be. We stepped out into the night, out of the garage, into something bigger. I didn't even feel the cold. As I slid into the soft leather seats of the limo, I looked back one last time. The curtains in the dining room were still parted. I saw them! Camille frozen mid-sip wine glass at her lips, but not moving. Derek leaning behind her, confused. My mother sitting at the head of the table, staring. None of them looked angry. They looked stunned, like the world had flipped the script. Like the person they shoved aside had become the one everyone was showing up for. The limo door closed with a soft click, and for once the sound didn't mean exclusion. It meant arrival. Inside, Margaret leaned toward the driver and gave directions. Then she turned back to me. "We'll discuss the speech," she said, "the book contract, and whatever support you need in the next few months." I nodded, still trying to catch up with the moment. Micah sat across from us, holding the leftovers like they were sacred. Ela leaned into my side and whispered, "Is this what it's like to be famous?" I smiled, not out of arrogance, but out of disbelief that joy like this could be real. "No, baby," I said. "This is what it's like to be respected." The dinner with Margaret felt like something out of someone else's life. Not because it was fancy, though it was, but because it was gentle. Linen tablecloths, real silverware, servers who called me ma'am and refilled glasses before they were empty. But the real difference was the conversation. Margaret didn't ask about Camille. She didn't pry. She didn't turn my pain into spectacle. She wanted to know me. All of me. She asked about the shelter days, about the night shifts at the clinic, about Micah and Ela, how they were adjusting what they loved, what made them laugh. She even took notes when I mentioned Ela color-coding my job applications. She smiled when I told her how Micah once Googled how to pay rent with no money because he overheard me crying in the kitchen and thought he could fix it. At one point, I caught myself apologizing. "Sorry, I'm rambling." She stopped me with a look, not stern, just still. "Grace, we don't get to hear stories like yours often enough. You're not rambling, you're revealing." By the end of the night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years heard. Not managed, not tolerated, heard. She covered the bill, of course she did, but the way she did it stayed with me. "You've already paid enough," she said. "Let us take it from here." That sentence cracked something open in me. The weeks that followed were surreal. Margaret's team reached out. Contracts, schedules, prep calls, a publicist who actually cared about my input. They sent over childcare options for when I'd be traveling, and even asked if I preferred to write early in the morning or late at night. I kept waiting for someone to say, "Sorry, we made a mistake," but no one did. I started writing, and then rewriting. The first drafts were messy, rambling, a blur of shame and survival, and unpaid bills, and freezer-burned dinners, and nights where I couldn't sleep because I was scared the car would get towed. I wrote it all. Every cracked moment, every broken rule I followed just to be acceptable. At first, I was terrified it would come off bitter. But Margaret kept reminding me, bitterness is just pain with no outlet. Writing was my outlet. And it became my anchor. The keynote speech was months away, but it felt like it was tomorrow. Every day I practiced, I found a new memory. I hadn't processed a new corner of my own life I had shoved away to make others comfortable. Some days were heavy, others were electric. Micah started asking questions, real ones. "Do you get nervous? Do you think Grandma will watch? Would you still have written if no one read it?" I told him yes, that I'd write even if the only reader was me. Ela started writing 2 poems mostly. Some about flowers, others about paper plates, and how the garage was cold, but we were warm. She showed me one titled, "Chairs Don't Make the Table." I cried when I read it. They were changing with me, not just because life was improving, but because they saw me fighting for something beyond survival. The day of the keynote arrived like a drumbeat in my chest. It wasn't fear exactly, more like pressure. A lifetime of swallowing my truth, and now I had 5 pages and 15 minutes to finally say it all out loud. The ballroom was packed. Hundreds of women, CEOs, teachers, college students, retired nurses, stay-at-home moms, survivors, fighters, all looking up at the stage like they expected to be moved. My hands trembled behind the podium. Then I saw Micah and Ila seated front row. And I started. I told them about the garage, about Thanksgiving, about the pie my daughter baked with so much pride, and the moment my son asked, "Did we do something wrong?" I talked about how easy it is to lose yourself when you're trying to make other people comfortable, how family can love the idea of you, but never bother to know the real you. I told them about the paper plate, and how it became the line I finally refused to cross. I watched their faces. I watched them cry. I watched them nod. I watched strangers become allies in a matter of minutes because my story somehow was their story too. When I stepped down, the applause didn't hit right away. It rose slow, like people were absorbing it first, letting it settle. Then it grew. Women lined up to hug me, to thank me, to say, "That was me." One woman whispered, "You said the thing I've been trying to say my whole life." I signed my first book deal 2 weeks later. They titled it More Than Scraps. I cried when I saw the cover. Not because it was pretty, though it was, but because my name wasn't buried at the bottom. It wasn't under someone else's story. It was the story. Not everything changed overnight. We still lived in our same apartment, though I finally had the savings to replace the old toaster and hang curtains that didn't come from a discount bin. The lights stayed on. The fridge stayed full. Micah stopped apologizing for asking questions. Ela started dreaming bigger. And me, I didn't shrink anymore. Not in rooms, not in conversations, not even in emails. I stopped over-explaining, stopped saying yes when I meant no, stopped editing myself to be more digestible. For the first time in my life, I felt solid. Not loud, not flashy, just real. I got messages from people who had read the book. Women in shelters, young writers, grandmothers who said they'd never told anyone how their families had made them feel small. The book didn't make me rich, but it made me visible. And sometimes that's the bigger currency. Thanksgiving came around again almost exactly a year after the garage. Camille didn't reach out, neither did Derek. My mother sent a short message that morning. "Hope you're well. Miss you sometimes." I stared at it for a while before replying. "We're doing fine. Hope you are too." No anger, no invitation, just peace. Ela asked if we could host Thanksgiving this time. "Just us," she said. "And a few friends. No folding chairs, only couches and pillows and warm food." So we did. We didn't have a chandelier. We didn't need one. People brought mismatched dishes and sat on the floor. Someone spilled cider. Someone else brought a pie that Ela declared even better than ours. There was music playing, candles flickering, laughter rising, love curling around the walls like a soft, invisible hug. Micah caught me watching it all and said, "You built this." I didn't argue, because he was right. I hadn't just escaped the garage. I had made sure it never happened again. Not to me. Not to them. Not to anyone who sat at our table. I used to think closure came with a confrontation. Some final dramatic moment where you stand tall, say your truth, and they all gasp and regret everything. But that's not how it happens. Closure is quieter than that. It's not about being heard by them. It's about hearing yourself and believing what you said. It's been almost a year since that day in the garage. And in some ways, I'm still trying to catch up to the woman I became when I stepped out of it. The speaking offers came slowly at first, then all at once. Schools, nonprofits. A library in Michigan offered to fly me out just to talk to a circle of teen girls who'd read a chapter of my book in English class. Everywhere I went, someone would pull me aside after and say, "That story. I've lived it. Maybe not the garage, but the feeling, that part." And I'd nod. Because that was the part. It wasn't about the concrete floor or the plastic utensils. It was about being told sometimes with words, sometimes with silence, "You don't matter here." And then finally answering, "I do. Just not to you." Micah's growing into himself. Taller than me, now quieter too. But when he speaks, it's with this calm depth that wasn't there before. He keeps a journal. Last week, he read me a piece he wrote called "Chairs Don't Make the Table." It started with, "My mom sat on a crate once, but she didn't bend." That's when I learned dignity isn't something they can give you. It's what you refuse to let them take. Ela still writes her little poems. Still watches people when they think no one's paying attention. Still asks big questions at bedtime like, "Do you think people are born kind or do they learn it?" We had a little celebration the day the book came out, just the three of us. We ordered pizza, played Monopoly. I signed their copies like I was famous and wrote different inscriptions for each of them. To Micah, for the boy who always saw the truth even when I didn't want to. To Ela, for the girl who made the garage feel like home even when it shouldn't have. Camille never reached out. Neither did Derek. My mother sent a Christmas card short store, bought no personal note. I didn't send one back. Not out of malice, just clarity. That door wasn't closed with anger. It was simply no longer my door to knock on. What I built after the garage, this new life, this new voice, wasn't meant to be a performance for people who refused to clap. It was for us, and for whoever else had been waiting to be seen. Earlier this year, Ela asked if she could bring the book to school. Her teacher wanted to read a chapter to the class. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, matter of fact. "I want people to know what real strength looks like." A few days later, she came home with a note in her backpack, handwritten, from another girl in her class. "I didn't know moms could be heroes. Mine's gone. But now I think maybe I can be like you." That note sits folded in my journal now, right next to the original draft of the garage scene. I keep both because one reminds me of what I lived, and the other reminds me why it mattered. We hosted Thanksgiving again this year. Same apartment, a little more worn, a little more ours. Friends came early to help. The table was too small, so people sat on cushions on the couch on the floor. Ela made name cards for everyone, nothing fancy, just folded index cards with stickers. There were second helpings, thirds actually. No one asked why we weren't at Camille's. No one needed to. After dinner, when the dishes were stacked and the kids were playing a game on the floor, I stepped outside for some air. The night was cold, clear, still. I thought about the garage. I thought about the paper plate. I thought about how far we'd come and how much I'd once been willing to endure just to feel included in a room that was never going to open its arms to me. I don't feel excluded anymore. I feel free, not because someone gave me permission, but because I stopped waiting for it. I looked back through the window at our home, the people laughing, the candles flickering low, the music humming in the background. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was mine. I heard the door open behind me. Ela came out in her fuzzy socks, holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. She handed me one. "You okay?" I smiled. "Yeah, I just needed a second." She nodded and looked out across the street. "I'm glad they put us in the garage." I blinked. "You are?" "Yeah," she said, completely serious. "Because if they didn't, the limo wouldn't have known where to find us." My breath caught. I stared at her, at the wild wisdom tucked inside her little frame. "You're smart," I said. "I get it from my mom." We stood there in silence, sipping cocoa. The moment stretched. Soft. Full. And then it settled. That's the thing no one tells you. Sometimes the place that breaks you is also the place that reveals you. And sometimes the people who discard you are the ones who unknowingly set the stage for your becoming. So no, the garage wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning. The day I stopped begging for a seat and started building my own table. They thought the garage would humiliate me. What they didn't see was that it clarified everything. I wasn't broken. I was just no longer willing to beg for crumbs. That folding chair, that paper plate, it didn't define me. It revealed who I'd outgrown. Sometimes life puts you in the cold to remind you you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to build your own warmth. And if someone hands you scraps, don't just walk away. Set your own table. The right people will find their way to it.